Good morning, everyone. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are discussing process, gel, and magic sheets on Light Talk.
And this is David in Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. So welcome to episode 109, everyone. And it is the end of the semester for all of us.
Yay! Yay! Grades are in.
Grades are in.
Grades
you're on
are
quarters,
in.
right? Or you're on semesters. Are you on semesters?
No, we're on semesters.
Yeah, you guys end earlier than we do.
Because it gets super hot here, and to get graduation, it is already getting hot. So it's 80 degrees. It's 80 degrees before noon. You know it's getting hot.
That's ridiculous. Another reason why I don't live in Florida anymore. How warm is it, Steve, where you're at in Dallas?
68.
Oh, lovely.
Yep, that's pretty much what the temperature is here in Long Beach.
Jealous.
So what are you guys doing this summer?
I have projects and I have vacation. I have 3 consulting projects now all rolling. One is a recital hall here in town. One is a new fine arts building with a theater and a black box and a lobby reception space in Tampa. And one is going to be a new 750-seat church. And in the middle of all that, I'm going to go to Europe, not to light a show, but I'm going to, for pleasure, Amsterdam and Copenhagen. But the cool thing is, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam has the largest collection of my hero's work anywhere in the world, and that's Rembrandt. And for the first time in history, they are showing all the Rembrandts they own at once. So we've already got our ticket to see that. So that's pretty exciting. And then whatever theater, opera, dance we can catch while we're there, we will be immersing ourselves in the pleasure of viewing, not making.
That's fantastic. And you are bringing that package I told you about back from Amsterdam, right?
We'll do that offline.
Oh, okay. That's
what package?
It's the Lumen Brothers swag. We ordered special Lumen Brothers swag from Amsterdam. It's coming in, and I think you guys are going to distribute it at LDI this year.
Oh, okay. I'm a little behind the curve on this, but I'm certainly a willing partner.
Okay, well, it's coming in imported from Amsterdam.
Is what I'm bringing legal?
Yes, it's legal. It's not anything like you think it is. I just thought it was.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll leave some
swag.
extra room in the luggage.
Exactly.
Sure, no problem.
So anyway, yeah, and for those who did listen to us last week, we have announced that we will be back at LDI, although I may not be there. Because I will be, I'm doing a show. I'm lighting a show in Palermo. So I have to look at the dates, but I don't know. We're going to, it may just be you guys and Ann, but we'll see.
Well, Ann will be a good stand-in.
Or maybe we'll do what we did with Fred Foster. You'll pipe me in. I don't think we have the technology. We're lucky even to get that damn show up the road.
Yeah, we're lucky we get the right. Exactly.
That's not hassle with piping me in. So
David, we could make extra work for you, and you could splice yourself.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be good. Steve, we didn't hear your summer plans. What are your summer plans?
I have a national tour going out this summer of one of the shows I did in New York. So that should launch sometime around June. Just waiting on the final contracts to come through.
That's cool, Steve. That'll keep you busy and out of trouble. I'm heading out to Central City for I believe it's my 21st season at the Central City Opera.
I thought you were retiring from that.
I said that for the past 7 years, but the directors they don't let me retire. They say, oh, no, you can retire, but just one more year because I'm doing this project. And they're all friends of mine, so I have a hard time saying no to friends. Plus, to be quite honest, I love the people out there. It's like a family. It's like a good summer theater family. When I was in Chicago doing Moby Dick, I saw Gene Shear, who's the librettist for Moby Dick, who's a very old friend of mine. And he started out as an artist at Central City like 20 years ago, just doing comic roles. He was an actor. And I remember when he started to write, and now he's writing some of the most amazing operas in the world, and very successful too. So, you make these lifelong friends, and a lot of them move on, and a lot of them, some stay. It's a great thing. So I don't know. Everybody asks, when are you going to retire? That being said, speaking of retirement, I'm going to officially announce my retirement from California State University, Long Beach, right here on the show today.
Sounds like you just did.
I'm done. Actually, no, to be quite honest, it is technically, yes, I'm retiring this semester, but I will be coming back to teach part-time in spring. So you know what that means? That means that I have from now until January to just do whatever I want to do.
This is scary. Everybody stay off the roads. David and his Tesla are
That's
coming.
Right. I'm taking a road trip, so that should be fun. But yeah, I mean, it's very liberating, to tell you the truth, and it's a wonderful moment. So I will no longer be a full-time professor.
Mazel tov.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I had lovely words from my dean yesterday. It was very nice. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing this summer. And so I'm going to go to Central City for 6 weeks with 2 of my students. And then I'm going to pack my dog in the back of my car, and we're going to head up the 101 all the way up to Whistler. So that should be a lot of fun. And finally, before we get started, I just want to mention that last week I trashed episode 3 of season 8 of Game of Thrones because it was so dark. But I neglected to mention that in that episode, the last 7 minutes of that episode has some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard on a television show. Composer Ramin Djawadi, his beautiful piano-led track called The Night King is absolutely stunning. It's so stunning I'm going to use it for a moving light project. But I just recommend everyone listen to that because in that last 7 minutes, it starts off with Sansa and Tyrion pretty much realizing that they're about ready to die. And there's a moment there where they look at each other and all the foreground sound fades out. And then all you hear, except for 1 or 2 little moments, between that point and the end of that episode is this incredible music. So I highly recommend you all listen to it. So that being said, I had to get a shout out to that, being a musician. Steve has our first listener question.
And it is William in Tennessee. And William writes, could you walk me through how you build the world of the play? Let's pick Shakespeare. You know, this question's come up a couple times, and I think I'm going to actually answer it for the first time.
What did we do last time? Fake it?
Well, no, we go through this whole thing about collaboration and talk to the director and read the play some more. And I think all that's kind of valid. But, you know, he's asking, let's talk about the rubber hitting the road here. So what I do, and I think Shakespeare's a good one to pick, is I take each scene, and before I start thinking about the play from a design point of view, I write down 3 things. Every act, every scene. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? And I start my process there. So if we go to Romeo and Juliet, let's pick that first scene. I don't know if it's scene 1 or the prologue, but it's that scene in which we see the 2 families gathering together for their first fight, and we have an introduction to them. So what do I see? I see morning sunlight. I see men running. I see windows opening and maybe slamming shut. I see clothes hanging out to dry. What do I hear? I hear maybe the cry of a child. I hear shouts. I hear horse hooves on the cobble street. I hear someone throwing their night excrements out onto the street and it's splashing down. You know, what do I smell? I smell bread baking. I smell the river. I smell blood. I smell smoke. I start trying to immerse myself into the world of the play. It also gives me a kind of a point of view to start talking to the director about what the scene is about and what's going on and the underlying story there. So that's kind of how I start. I dissect every scene and I try to put it in a real world. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? And I start from there.
I think what Steve talked about is, for me, the poetry of it. Is he's thinking like a poet, like what's the visceralness of that? And something that I use, and I also encourage my students to use, is very similar to what Steve is saying. And there's a nice book called From Page to Stage by Marianne Ingram. And she has these series of questions that you ask yourself about the play and about each scene. It's a good guide. It's very similar to what Steve is talking about. And I have to do that. Something else that I do is I go through the scenes and I pull out words that conjure a feeling or an image, and I write all those words down in a list, and then I start to see how they form patterns and repetitions, and you really get a sense of what that what that world really is. Because the playwright does start with words, but then we have to translate that into emotions and feelings. I think it's a great technique, Steve. Love it.
Yeah, and I would add to that because that's sort of a physical world thing that's very personal, like the smell of the laundry and and the excrements from the night before splashing down. I mean, all that is the physical world. There's also that emotional world that gets even deeper into your own personal experience, and that has a lot to do with the subject matter of the play.
Another way to physicalize that idea that I do this on some shows, and I sort of even do it on consulting projects. But do you guys know what a mind map is? You can look it up. It's kind of interesting. It's where you take a blank canvas or a sheet of paper while you have the project or the scenes in mind. And sometimes you put on some neutral music in the background, and you just let your mind free associate about what you're thinking about. And through that free association, ideas and thoughts and, like Steve says, smells or feelings that are physical, you start to write them down in sort of a free-form way. And you just let that happen for like an hour or two. And then when you come back to it and you see the things that your mind pushed out from its subconscious or its unconscious to its consciousness onto that mind map. It's letting your mind just go where it wants to go. And then, which is sort of just like, it's like improvising jazz. Like if you're playing music, it's letting it come out and then see what comes out without you directing it. You could maybe I'll put up a little link to what a mind map is. I forget who taught me that years ago, but that's a technique that I use, and it's a technique I share with the students.
Great. Hey, Robin in Chicago asks, can you discuss your magic sheet? What do you prefer? Oh, there we go. Magic sheet. So what is a magic sheet, first of all? Magic sheet, some people call them cheat sheets. I always like the term magic sheet because it's magic, man. Right?
We're making the magic.
We're making magic from the sheet, man. Well, you know what it is? It's for the people who don't know, it's actually any sort of visual aid that you can use that can give you a quick reference to the channels and groups that you want to call out when you're lighting a show. And there are so many different styles of magic sheets. Again, thinking back of when I started as an assistant and even as a student designer, it was from everything from like drawing little arrows and putting the
colored pencils and arrows.
Oh, I never used colored pencils, man. That was much too elaborate for me.
I love the colored pencil thing.
I would I'd use highlighter pens. Highlighter pens are kind of cool. I draw something and put a channel number and then highlight it in yellow and highlight that in blue or whatever.
Yeah,
and
so you did use colored pencils.
I did. I always liked that sort of little graphical thing where I would have like a little mini ground plan down there and draw arrows. And if it had gobos in it, I'd draw little circles around the arrowhead. You
did get into it. You did.
I don't know. Because I needed something, that was very clear for me in a very graphical way. I discovered the magic sheet that I really liked, which is a very graphical magic sheet, and then have basically lists of specials for, broken down by scene. That's the way I would do it. It's sort of in a way of doing it like a light plot where you have the key light for a scene, and then you'd have fill light and maybe specials and things like that. And I would break it down by scene. So I'd have a different magic sheet for scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, etc. As things got a little more complicated as far as moving lights and LEDs and the technology changed over the years, and as lighting board manufacturers, as those consoles got more elaborate and sophisticated, we were able to actually create magic sheets within the console. And that's what I use now, especially when I'm using an ETC product. And I've posted in the past, and I just posted one today actually, a magic sheet that I use that's typical of the ETC Ion EOS type of system, where you can create your own magic sheet on the board, and it will show you not only the groups or the type of lights, but also show you which lights are active and at what intensity they're at. And that is so, so nice because it gives you more information than an old style magic sheet that you wrote on a piece of paper can give you. It shows you basically what lights are active, which ones are available. I don't have to turn to my assistant and ask, what light can I use? I need a special down left. I can just look up there and see. So yeah, that's what I use now. And the magic sheet will change for every single show, depending on if it's a heavy moving light show or if I only have a handful of moving lights. if it's mostly a conventional show or maybe it's a rep plot, all that will change. The way I lay out my magic sheets will change. And the other thing that I want to mention about the advantage of doing it on a computer screen like this, like I'm talking about the EOS system, is that you can place that screen right in front of you, that monitor, and have it low enough so that when you're looking at the stage, you look over the monitor. And all you have to do to pull out a channel, if you don't memorize it, is to look down a bit and see it right there on the screen and then call it out and then look up again. Of course, you need to be sitting high enough on the seat to be able to look over the monitor, which is why I usually like to sit on a board, a padded board. That it minimizes that strain on your eyes that you would get by looking at the stage and then looking down at a piece of paper being lit by a little lamp and trying to see the number and then looking up at the stage again. It really does help with eye fatigue. What do you guys think?
I don't know. It's kind of a slippery slope there. I think the cautionary tale is to the young designer who is also programming his or her own work. And I think sometimes if you're not careful, I mean, again, I'm talking about entry-level designer, you get trapped staring at the console and you never look at the stage. And so you're quickly punching and editing and putting stuff in. And what I have noticed is I will say to a first-year student, did you see what just happened on stage? And they'll go, what do you mean? And it's because they're staring at the screen. So I think, again, this is the novice, not the experienced programmer. I think it's important to not get trapped looking at the computer screen or let the programmer be the programmer and let you be you. I also like to move about the theater. I mean, there's some shows I'm tied to a desk, and you're right. I love looking down at the monitor and seeing where everything is. But I also like kind of just staring at the stage and asking for things without taking my eye away from the stage.
I have to agree with that. It is a trap. I think that Steve is right. At UF, almost every show has a programmer. And sometimes, like for example, on a show this semester, I have a student who's programmer but becoming a designer and was really used to pushing their own buttons and looking at the screens. I said, you're not going to be doing this on this show. I want you to watch the stage and tell the programmer what you need, because I have very competent programmers. And that was it was a change for her. Right, but she really worked it. She became much more engaged in and getting up and walking around. But so yeah, I think Steve makes a good point for the young designer to really pull yourself away from the console, which this student had. It was a challenge for her, but then she did. It's like, no, you're the designer here, not the programmer.
I agree with you, Stan. And Steve, that was a great point. You got to watch the stage. You don't want to get trapped with your eyes looking down ever. But there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that has to do with another type of magic sheet, and that's called a moving light map. And this is something that I have my assistants develop after we initially light the show, and we assign different moving lights for different lighting strokes. I have these moving light maps that are divided into scenes, and it shows me, basically, it's a graphical indication of what every moving light is doing. Then on like a ground plan, and it's in a book, and I just go sheet to sheet to sheet to sheet to sheet, depending on how the show is progressing. And I can look down and I can see, fixtures 305 and 306 are doing that diagonal backlight. And it basically says 305, 306, and there's a color-coded path of light, so that I don't have to ask what light is lighting that chair, what light is coming through the window, what light is, I could see it right there.
Well, it looks like I have the next question from Tobin in Denmark, who writes, what's the most unusual lighting project you've ever done? Now, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've got 3, and I'll try and be, well, maybe not as long as David's magic sheet answer, but I'll try. So when I lived in the Midwest in Nebraska, I used to go out to these small prairie towns, and I used to joke and say, I'm going where no lighting designer has ever gone before. But anyway, what was cool is that you would go to these towns that had these 3-story buildings, and these were built, I guess, in the 1800s, all across the country. They were called circle rep companies, and the first floor would be commercial, be like a general store, and then the second and third floors were 2-story spaces that were opera houses, and there'd be these loading docks that would be like 10 feet in the air with a crane to bring the scenery in, And these were done back in the day when companies would go to a major city, right, and do a production, and then they would run out to this circle of spaces that were within a day's travel from the major city and do these performances in these rural locations. And in the 90s, I was getting these calls to go out and renovate them. So I did a lot of lighting work in these circle rep situations in these small prairie towns. That was unusual. The most unusual two are lighting projects. The two, one was working at Smithsonian on one particular piece that was colored thread in the air as a sculpture, and how to light colored thread in a gallery space and not blind the observer and graze these threads that were put together in a rainbow format. That was really unusual and a lot of fun. And the most unusual I'm actually doing right now, which is sort of odd. I am measuring light in a hospital, intensive care units, as part of an institutional review board study. And we are measuring all the metrics you could imagine: CRI, TM30, melanopic lux, spectrum in ICUs, intensive care units, and nurses' stations in ICUs in an old building. And then we're going to be doing the same measurements in a new building with a different lighting design. And then the study is going to show differences between staff burnout, health outcomes, people's attitudes, all of this. So that's sort of like the most unusual lighting project I have ever done, and I'm in the midst of that right now.
It seems to me like whenever you do architecture, you're going to be doing a lot of unusual projects. And I just think back of all those crazy things I did for Disney when I consulted for them back in the early 90s and late 80s. There were a lot of unusual things that, unfortunately, I cannot talk about. Because I have non-disclosure agreements.
Still? The NDAs are still in effect?
I can't. I would never do it. Anyway, there was one project that I worked on when I was an architectural designer after I left SMU for a little bit, where we were designing a lot of celebrities' homes. And one of the celebrities, and I can't tell you which one, wanted a foyer that looked like a disco. So when you walked in, it was like being in a discotheque. So we designed this foyer with 4 cyber lights in it. Cyber lights, 1,200
wow,
watts.
How tall was
lights.
was the foyer?
It wasn't tall enough, I'll tell you.
Because the cyber lights are pretty big.
They were actually mounted in the coves. So these coves were gigantic.
Wow.
And with an opening for the mirrors. And I don't know how we did not burn down that house. But yeah, that was probably the most unusual one. That's non-Disney.
You're listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers. And this week, Light Talk is sponsored by...
From way up in the Texas Panhandle, it's Total Bastard Products. You graduated from college 8 years ago. At some point, you need to leave that entry-level console behind. You need to put on your big boy pants and learn a man's console, the Grand MA. Well, Total Bastard Products has just the thing to get you going. The Programmer Yourself Beginner's Chair. The baby programmer can now sit or stand safely behind a Grand MA and learn the basics. It comes with a beep-beep horn to let folks know you're in trouble, a punching bag to help you let off some frustration, and, of course, a 25,000-page Grand MA owner's manual in German. The Programmer Yourself Beginner's Chair has guardrails that swing out to let juniors sit down. It even comes with a safe supporting straddle. Add in a gleaming chrome-like finish and the Programmer Yourself Beginner's Chair is complete. Now you can pretend you're a $1,200 a day programmer, just like the big boys and girls. Start today. What could go wrong? Order now, and we'll throw in a Total Bastard Products no-spill sippy cup. So pour yourself a cup of milk and get started. How do you know you're getting genuine Total Bastard Products? Just look for the caveman holding that roll of gel.
That's great. I like the German
there's
manual.
some good imagery in that.
And we need it because it's tough, man. It could be, those consoles could be quite intimidating to the young programmer.
Or the old designer.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those ducks, they're still around, guys. These ducks are going to outlast us, I'm telling you. The sound of them tells us that once again, it's time for our Let's Talk About segment. And today we have a very interesting subject, and that is, what is the key to developing a good team?
Oh, I could do that in one sentence.
Okay, go.
Hire good people and let them do their jobs.
Now back to light talk. I think that's in a nutshell, absolutely. But also, the team, I think, goes a lot deeper into just letting people, not micromanaging.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I think it goes a little further into that because we're kind of like a team that sort of shares our ideas, right? We develop, a piece of art from the total of our ideas.
Synergy?
That's it. It's synergy.
Oh, I win the prize. Do I get a teddy bear?
No, you get an extra piece of swag from Amsterdam.
Oh, okay.
So synergy is created when a group of people are able to trust each other, not only let them do their job, but also trust each other that we could be open and share ideas.
I think you hit the most important word there, is the T word, trust. It's terribly lacking these days, all over the place.
So when you have a team of people who like each other, who spend time with each other, who respect each other, and trust each other, who can talk about the play, but also talk about other things, you become friends. And you reach a point where you've got this total relaxed synergy happening. This is rare. Unfortunately, it's rare. I'm fortunate after like 40 years of doing this crazy thing that I'm able to have 2 or 3 teams like this. But a lot of times it doesn't happen. The connection's not there. It's like dating, really, when you think about it. The connection's not there. You got to have something. Just because your date may look great doesn't mean that that person is the right person for you to create a relationship. And it's the same way with a band, and it's the same way with a team of theater artists.
Or even Lumen Brothers making a podcast. Let me ask a rhetorical question and then answer it. So how do you build trust? What is, if there was a manual for building trust, like what would be the steps in building trust? And I'm going to answer that question. I think this works for me. And I do teach this. When you say you're going to do something, if you do it and you meet expectations or even exceed expectations, that's one way to build trust. Another way to build trust is, and David's talking about friendships, is when you allow yourself to be vulnerable. So when you share something that's personal with somebody, you reveal something about yourself that you feel comfortable revealing it. And then when that person keeps that confidence with you and then they share something about themselves, that's how that friendship builds. That's what trust is, right? So I think, to recap, delivering what you say you're going to deliver builds trust. And then sharing something about yourselves with each other builds trust, and that builds friendship. And friendship is based on trust. And I think that's in our business, when you meet somebody for the first time, you don't have a lot of time to build that trust. David, you have these wonderful long-standing relationships, and so do I. But sometimes you have to build that trust quickly because, we're going into tech tomorrow, and we just met 2 days ago. So building trust quickly, you need something that you can do to sort of, either it's over coffee, it's over tea, it's over a beer. You have to make that friendship, and that friendship is based on sharing, and then keeping each other's confidence, and being a mensch, essentially.
It's funny you say mensch. That is such a wonderful word. I always look at these great mensches of history, like Shep Gordon, people who have all this money, but they'll just go ahead and help other people no matter what. I think it's just fantastic.
Let me add something, because since you mentioned Shep, I had this conversation with somebody at school the other day, and everybody's interested in what group they belong to and how that group is treated, or this group is treated and that group is treated because of these differences. I got to tell you, the thing that I'm most interested in is someone's character. And character is easily discerned by not necessarily what people say, because words are important, and I'm not diminishing the power of words, but it's really determined by what they do and how they behave. And character is what really matters more than anything else. And that's how trust is built. And that's how good teams happen, by people of good, high character.
Right.
I have a question here from Elizabeth in New Zealand who says, why do companies make clear gel? Well, I think the only clear gel that I know about is heat shield, which is basically, back in the day, if you were using a very saturated color like a deep, deep blue or deep, deep red, the infrared wavelengths from the tungsten fixture would burn that gel out prematurely, and that could be problematic. So they developed a material that would absorb the infrared and block the infrared from getting to the color dyes in the gel. So it really wasn't for this purpose of clear. It does seem kind of silly. Why would you put a clear gel in front of your light? But if you're trying to preserve a deep color, I think Roscoe made it. I think Lee made it. I can't remember. But it was called heat shield, but it appeared as clear. Or unless you were going to maybe draw on it or dye it yourself, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe there's some other uses. But the one that comes to mind for me was heat shield. I don't know what you guys know about the clear gel.
Well, clear gel had a couple different purposes. Lee, I think, was the first to make it. And keep in mind, Lee was making things for photographers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that clear gel had a purpose in photography. Also, if you go back to the day of color scrollers,
oh yes,
in which you're taping
Right.
half a dozen gels together, typically the leader on that roll would be clear. So, I mean, clear gel's been around for a while.
Yeah, you start with
it
open
has
white.
some, it has some utility purposes.
I remember that now. Thank you, Steve. I remember that.
Oh, the days of scrollers. Hey guys, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
But if you were to choose to litigate us, our law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flair, and Glare, and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we interview lighting designer Dawn Chang.
All of that, and someone's going to cook up a new sponsor. Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye, everybody.